Hello students, this is Effective Technical Communication and I am Professor Joshi from LJIET Institute of Engineering and Technology. Today we are going to start with a new chapter, that is the etiquettes. Now what is an etiquette? Etiquette is a code of behavior that describes the expectations of social behavior of an individual according to the norms of the society, group or organization. That means that a person behaves in a different manner in a society which is acceptable to the society. We may behave in a certain manner at home when we are all alone, but with people we need to follow certain norms. So in organizations also, which is again a social setup and it is a professional one, we need to follow certain norms of communication, and that is what is called as etiquette. So in this chapter we are going to study about the telephone etiquettes, the etiquettes for visit to foreign countries, the etiquettes when people from foreign countries visit our organization. We will also talk about etiquettes for small talks, and we will talk about time management and learning to say no. So today we are going to discuss about the etiquettes that we need to follow when we talk over the phone. Now, as we all know that one of the fastest ways of communication is through the telephone, and it is very handy, convenient and cost-effective method of communicating in organizations. And in daily life of an organization, it becomes very easy to communicate through a phone. Hence, it has become the most popular means of communication. The biggest challenge in telephonic communication is that the effectiveness of the body language is lost. So this advantage is not there. So the clarity can only be achieved if, number one, the listener has very good listening skills. Number two, the tone and clarity of voice of the speaker is effective. So here, in order to overcome the disadvantage of not being able to use the eye contact and facial expressions, we need to use these two things. Now, when we communicate through a telephone, we have to really concentrate very hard. So we also need to remember that when we receive a call, we are listening to someone on the phone, we have to give some feedback that we are already listening. When we are face to face, we may make an eye contact or nod our head. But on the phone, you have to speak things like okay, I see, etc. This makes the speaker understand that okay, you are listening and the speaker will keep on speaking. So that is very important. Again, for the speaker, it is important to make a correct choice of words because here the other person is not able to see your facial expression. So you have to use appropriate words. So first of all, we will see the etiquettes for a caller. Suppose you are calling someone, but the person who is picking up is some other person. So what care you must take? There are 6 points that you need to remember. Point number 1. When you make a call, start with a greeting like good morning, good afternoon, etc. followed by your name and your organization. For example, good morning, this is Raj Mehta calling from Techsoft Limited. Second point, if you have called the office number and someone else picks up the call, then ask politely to pass on the telephone to the person to whom you want to talk. Thirdly, if you are asked for the reason of your call, then please give the details of the call. And if it is confidential, then politely say that I want to discuss something which is confidential. Fourth point is that if the person asks you to hold for a while, then please do not get irritated. Because in an office, there may be so many other work and the person to whom you want to speak to may be doing some work or is not in the office. So do not get irritated if you are asked to hold the line. Also remember that if you are asked to hold the line, then first tell thank you to that person, because if the phone is transferred to the other person, then there will be no opportunity for you to thank this person who has picked up your call. Fifth point is that if the concerned person is not available, then give a detailed message to the person who has picked up the phone and ask him to pass it on to the person. Now, you must also ask the person if you want the person to call you up, or if you will call up the person again, then give the timing when you are going to call up. And lastly, do not get irritated if you are put on hold for a long time, or if the person to whom you want to speak to is not available. You should always maintain a friendly tone in a telephone, because you always need to have good relations with the organizations. So end your call with a polite thank you or have a good day. Now next we are going to talk about is the etiquettes for caller when the person to whom you want to speak picks up the call. So again, number 1 is start with a greeting. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, etc. along with the name and your organization's name. Secondly, before starting the conversation, first make sure that the person has time to talk to you. Do not just start off. So tell that person that I want to take your 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you want to discuss. Just give him the idea why you called up and ask politely, is it good time to talk to you right now? Or is it good time to speak to you? Maybe the person is in the middle of some work and is busy. The person will not be able to concentrate on what you are saying. So it is very important to ask the person whether it is a good time to speak to that person. Thirdly, if you have called up the person, that means you want to give some information. So keep all the information handy before you dial the number, because it will be very rude. After calling the person, you keep the person waiting and then you search for the information, or you open your Excel sheet on the laptop and you keep on searching what you want to talk about. So keep all the information and data ready with you and then you dial the number of the person with whom you want to talk. Fourthly, before hanging, always say a polite thank you or have a good day. And lastly, this is a very important matter, very important concern. Always make sure that there is no noise in the surrounding, because if there will be some noise in the surrounding, your concentration will not be there. So make sure you are in a quiet place when you call a person for some important work. So these were the etiquettes for the caller when the person to whom you want to speak to picks up the call. So now we will talk about the etiquettes for the receiver of the call. Suppose you receive the call, then what you should do? So number 1, if you are working in an organization, understand one thing. If a phone rings and if it is not at your place but nobody is there to pick up the call, then promptly pick up the call. Never make any caller wait for long. Secondly, when you pick up the call, greet with your full name and the organization name. In some organizations, people just pick up the phone and greet followed by directly giving their organization name. For example, good morning Vodafone, or you may give your name and then name of the company. For example, good morning Raj Mehta from Vodafone. So this is how you answer the call. Next is ask the name of the person who has called up and offer for help. Asking like, may I help you, or how can I help you? Next, if the person wants to talk to someone else, then ask the person to wait and pass on the call to some other person. Or if you have to pass on the message, then you should keep a notepad with you. A notepad and pen always handy on your desktop, so that you can note down the correct information and the full information, because if you have to pass on the message to someone or you have to remember for some future action, you have to note down things. Otherwise, that will look very unprofessional. And lastly, very important factor is that if you have received a call but that call was not for you, then make sure that you pass on the message to the concerned person without fail. This kind of responsibility you should take when you receive the call. Now some do's and don'ts of telephonic conversation. Number 1, be polite and tactful in using appropriate words. Remember that your tone says it all in the telephonic conversation. So keep your tone appropriate. Number 2, always offer for help. Do not shy away from helping anyone or do not feel irritated when you have to answer calls. Number 3, greet and give your name and organization. Number 4, ask necessary questions to clarify about what the other person is trying to say, and also confirm whether the listener has understood or not. Next, paraphrase at the end. That means confirm, repeat what the other person has said and ask whether you have understood is correct or not. That is called paraphrasing. Listen attentively to the caller and give your verbal feedback by saying, what you have understood. Next point is that let the other person always complete first and then you say something. Keep notepad and pen handy. Hold your mouthpiece properly. It should neither be very far away that the other person has to really work hard to listen to you, or it should not be very near to your mouth. Never ever shout on the telephone. While talking on the phone, do not get distracted by your surrounding. Maybe you are in the office and your colleagues are speaking. So do not look here and there or do not listen to them. If that is the case, then go to some quiet place and talk. Do not do any parallel conversation. Many a times people are talking on the phone, but they are also talking to someone else who are there present in the moment. So that is wrong. Do not do any parallel conversation because it disturbs the person on the other side. At the same time, you will lose your concentration. So that is always a no. Next, never ever use a slang in a telephone. Actually, never ever use a slang in the organizations. While talking on the phone, never chew a chewing gum or never eat anything or drink anything. Don't sound impatient or frustrated because sometimes you may have received many calls during the day, but don't get irritated because the other person doesn't know the count of calls that you may have received. So do not get impatient or frustrated. Understand that it is your duty and you have to do it. And lastly, always call back whenever you have promised to call back. Because that is the only complaint that people have, that the follow-up is not there. On the phone you may have promised the person that I will call up or I will do this thing, and then if you forget. And that is why you have to keep a notepad always ready with you so that you jot down whatever you have heard from the phone and then you take the follow-up action. That is a very, very important professional thing that you must do. Now the next important topic that we are going to discuss is about dealing with difficult callers. And this is a very, very difficult task. Now difficult callers means people who call up and start shouting at you. Who does this? The customers who are not happy with the service of your organization may call you up and start shouting. So what do you do at that time? You may also get angry, but there is no reason to get angry. Understand one thing, that the state of the mind of the other person is not okay right now, and the person needs to talk to you. Even if it is not your fault, you must first listen out the person, because once the frustration is vented out, the person will become calm. And understand one thing, the person is not shouting at you personally, but the person is shouting or abusing your organization because someone in your organization may have made the mistake. So you have to listen as the representative of the organization. Also, even if it is not your fault, you have to apologize, because you have to apologize on behalf of your organization. So these are the points you have to keep in mind when you have to deal with a difficult caller. Point number 1 is that the caller is angry because something wrong has happened to that person and that person has faced a lot of problem. And that error was at the end of your organization. Number 2 is that the caller is shouting on you, but actually he is abusing the organization and not you. Number 3 is that you are the part of the organization. So the first thing you have to do is to apologize. Number 4 is that you have to talk very calmly. Even if the other person is not talking calmly, you have to talk calmly and you have to be a very, very good listener. Number 5 is that if someone else is responsible for the situation, calmly ask the person, would you mind holding the line? I will transfer the line to the concerned person, or I will ask the person to call you back. 6th point is that always address the difficult person with his name, because psychologically, when a person listens to one's name, the person feels treated well, and it will make the difficult caller calm. And the last point is that if you have to pass on the message of this difficult caller to another person who is responsible for that error, then without any delay you have to pass on this message. And you also have to go further by taking the responsibility that this matter is solved, because it was you who had picked up the phone, and that is why you also become a responsible person in this particular issue. So this is all about the etiquettes when you talk on the phone in the organization. I hope you have understood all of them and you will implement in your professional life. Thank you.